Felipe Massa, one of the greatest Brazilian Formula One drivers to ever set foot on the grid. He raced with determination and skill. I've been wanting to make a video on this driver for a while now, and finally I get that opportunity for us to look back at this F1 driver's history in the sport. So here's the details on the F1 career of Felipe Massa. Born in Sao Paulo, Brazil in 1981, Felipe Massa began his racing career at just the age of 8 years old. He competed in the karting championships for the next 7 years, and in 2000, Massa won the Italian Formula Renault Championship and won the European Formula Renault Championship the same year. The following year, Massa raced in the European Formula 3000 Championship and won 6 out of the 8 races that season, a commanding championship victory for the Brazilian driver. In 2002, Massa got the call up to Formula One. He began his F1 career at the Sauber Formula One team and made his F1 debut at the 2002 Australian Grand Prix. Unfortunately, he and teammate Nick Heidfeld were caught in a multi-car crash in the race, which we covered in a previous video here on the channel. In his first season, the rookie driver made a few mistakes, but even as a rookie, Massa did pick up a few points during the season and had a best finish of 5th in Spain. However, for 2003, Massa was dropped by Sauber, which meant the Brazilian driver was left without a Formula One seat. For the 2003 season, Massa joined Ferrari as their test driver and gained experience before re-signing with Sauber for the 2004 season. Massa stayed with Sauber for the next 2 years and had a best finish of 4th with the team. Since Sauber was bought by BMW for the 2006 season, Massa was let go by Sauber after 2005. But a certain Italian manufacturer saw potential in the former Sauber driver and signed him up for the 2006 season. After being their test driver just 3 years ago, Felipe Massa was signed by Ferrari for the 2006 F1 season, and he would be partnering the great 7-time world champion Michael Schumacher. This was a huge step for Massa's career, as he would be joining the team that had a massive reputation as the most successful F1 team in the history of the sport, and they would be fighting for the World Championship that year. Massa scored his first ever F1 podium at the Nürburgring with his teammate Schumacher taking the win, and at the 2006 Turkish Grand Prix, Massa took his first ever pole position in F1, and to his amazement, he would take his first race victory later on in the Grand Prix. After winning the Turkish Grand Prix, Massa would win again in Brazil. His home crowd would be watching this time as the Brazilian driver took his home race victory. This would be a sensational season for Massa, as this proved that he had the pace to not just win races, but also to win championships. Following a great first season for Ferrari, Felipe Massa was confirmed to race for the Ferrari team in 2007. But he would not be partnering up with Schumacher, who shockingly announced his retirement to the media in September. In 2007, Massa was partnered with Kimi Räikkönen, and these two drivers gave Ferrari one of the best lineups on the grid. Ferrari and McLaren were sure to give F1 one of the most exciting seasons, with Massa and Räikkönen at Ferrari and 2005 and 2006 world champion Alonso at McLaren partnering newly signed rookie Lewis Hamilton. Massa won the Bahrain and Spanish Grand Prix from starting on pole position and would later win again in Turkey to make it back-to-back victories in Turkey for the Ferrari driver. It was possible for Massa to win the Brazilian Grand Prix that year. However, he had to sacrifice his victory to help Kimi Räikkönen. This was to help Kimi secure the F1 championship. Unfortunately, Massa was not in the title fight and finished 4th in the championship, behind the McLarens and his teammate Räikkönen. And while his 2007 season did not go the best, 2008 would be a totally different story and would be a game changer for Massa's F1 career. 2008 saw Massa in contention for the championship. Lewis Hamilton led by 7 points to Felipe, and they headed into the final race at Brazil, Massa's home race, where he'd finished second or higher in the last 2 races, and in 2008, he had the chance of becoming the champion of the world. Massa qualified on pole and led the race to the flag, dominating the entire Brazilian Grand Prix. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton, his championship rival, had a difficult race, struggling for pace in the Grand Prix. In the race, Lewis had to finish 6th or lower for Massa to be world champion, and on the final lap of the Grand Prix, Massa was still leading the race, with Hamilton down in 6th position. Massa crossed the line thinking he was world champion, since Hamilton was still 6th heading into the turn 10. The Ferrari garage was celebrating, but then focused their attention to the TV screens, when shockingly to the Ferrari garage, Timo Glock was going slowly at the final heavy braking zone. Because of this, Hamilton passed Glock and got up into 5th position, securing his first world championship at the final braking zone. This championship finale goes down in history for one of the greatest moments in F1's championship deciders. Massa was disappointed. He did everything he could to win that championship and was definitely a proven champion, but unfortunately, it just wasn't meant to be in 2008. In 2009, Massa and Raikkonen returned to Ferrari, but with Brawn and Red Bull coming into the championship, this left Ferrari with not enough pace for the world championship fight. Things just got worse for the team and for Felipe Massa when drama struck at the Hungarian Grand Prix when a part of Barrichello's Brawn flew into Massa's helmet, knocking him unconscious. Thankfully, Massa was okay, but could not continue for the rest of the F1 season due to being in recovery. The Italian driver Giancarlo Fisichella replaced Massa for the rest of the season. In 2010, Massa returned from recovery and was partnered by 2-time world champion Fernando Alonso. Ferrari started the season strong by taking a 1-2 finish at the first race in Bahrain. Massa would finish second to Alonso, who would win the Grand Prix. Later on in the season, in Germany, Massa took the early lead of the Grand Prix. However, this is where that famous line came from: "Fernando is faster than you." Massa was instructed by the team to let Alonso by for the win. From then on, it seemed Ferrari made Alonso their number 1 driver rather than Massa. Despite this dilemma, Massa continued on with the team for 3 more years, but the 2013 season would be Massa's last season with Ferrari. He scored his final podium at the 2013 Spanish Grand Prix, and finally at the end of 2013, Massa announced that he would be leaving Ferrari after being with the team for 7 years. In 2014, Massa joined Williams and would partner Valtteri Bottas. With the new regulations suiting Mercedes engines, Williams, who ran Mercedes engines, were very competitive. At the 2014 Austrian Grand Prix, Massa took his first pole position for the team and first since the 2008 Brazilian Grand Prix. Unfortunately, 2 races after the great result in Austria, the German Grand Prix did not go well for Massa, as he was involved in an incident with Kevin Magnussen that saw his car go upside down. Thankfully, Massa was unharmed and continued on with the season. At the 2014 Italian Grand Prix, Massa scored his first Williams podium, finishing 3rd overall. Later on, he would take 2 more podiums that season, one in Brazil and a 2nd place in Abu Dhabi. During the 2014 season, Massa and Bottas took Williams to 3rd in the team's championship, just right behind Mercedes and Red Bull. 2015 went well again for the Williams team. A great example of their performances was at the British Grand Prix, when Massa and Bottas both got a great start against the 2 Mercedes and led 1-2 at Williams' home Grand Prix. At the end of the season, Massa scored 6th place in the championship, 2 podiums, and helped Williams to take 3rd in the championship for the 2nd year running. 2016 was a more difficult season for Massa and for Williams, who were outpaced by Mercedes, Ferrari, and Red Bull. This made Williams slip down into 5th in the championship, and at the end of the season, Felipe Massa announced that he would be retiring from F1. However, this would not be Massa's last F1 season. Because of Nico Rosberg's shock retirement, that meant Bottas would move to Mercedes, leaving an unexpected open seat at the Williams team. Massa decided to push back his retirement and continued to race for the Williams team into 2017. Since Bottas left for Mercedes, Massa would have a new teammate as well, Lance Stroll. Massa could have gotten a podium at the 2017 Azerbaijan Grand Prix, but due to an issue on the car, he had to retire. Although, Stroll was able to get onto the podium and give Williams their only podium during the season. Felipe Massa scored his final F1 point at the 2017 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix and finished 11th in the championship, just ahead of teammate Stroll. After the 2017 season, Massa announced his F1 retirement, and he would not return to F1 for 2018. After retirement from Formula 1, Massa switched to Formula E and raced for 2 years in the electric motorsport. And in 2022, Massa became the new president of the FIA Drivers' Commission. Felipe Massa's career in F1 is legendary. He raced for 3 different teams, 2 of them being the most successful F1 teams in the history of the sport. He achieved 11 race victories, 16 pole positions, and 41 podiums. In my opinion, he is one of the best F1 drivers in the world, and I really respect him as a racing driver, and that's just one of the reasons why he's my favorite F1 driver. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one, and if you'd like to see more content like this, please make sure to subscribe down below, and to the bottom left, you can watch another video right now. So have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.